Good evening. This is
America's
Mayor Live, the fastest going.
The fastest hour on the internet. We like to call it. We stole that from Rush Limbaugh. What was Rush Limbaugh saying? Was it the fastest 3 hours on the radio?
Yeah.
So we're taking that from Rush.
Very, very close to here, and I played golf with Rush Limbaugh very close to here quite a few times.
I wonder if he came here.
So
Rush was a cigar smoker.
Yeah, but probably it was
here. Yeah, did he come here?
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
No, Rush loved. Every time we played golf, we had cigars. So, just as you would imagine, right? So they couldn't defeat Trump. So now they're trying to defeat him by trying to stop him from getting the people that he wants, and they want him to put in the people that they want. But like he won, and he's got a mission. I never understood this. I can't remember how long I was mayor, but the New York Times, I think it was the Times, wrote an editorial saying I had filled all the positions with too many of my former assistant U.S. attorneys, too many people that supported me, and too many people that agreed with me. So at the press conference, I asked him if we could make a deal. I said, if you let me get away with that in my first term, in my second term, I'll try to accomplish everything I want to do with people who totally disagree with me and hate me. I mean, it's so totally ridiculous. So somebody says, I'm going to lower taxes, which is what he said, right? He's going to lower taxes. He's both going to try to continue the tax reduction he did, and he's going to try to lower them even more. Now, how the hell do you appoint somebody that doesn't want to lower taxes to lower taxes? It makes no sense. Or he wants to be tough on China. Well, most of them are frightened to be tough on China because China has in some way or another infiltrated so much of our government and our society, not just our government. What China has done since we opened up to them is probably the most brilliant infiltration of a government, of another government ever. And the last three and a half years, it's been easy. Up until then, it wasn't that easy. But by opening the border and not checking anyone, you're basically saying to Xi Jinping, hey, let me get my spies in. Let me get them in now. This is my opportunity to get a couple of thousand in there. And they were doing pretty well when there were restrictions. Imagine what they did when there were no restrictions. There's no way to know how many illegal aliens are in this country right now as a result of what Biden did when he opened the border. And it was deliberate. At the Democratic convention in 2020, he told people to surge to the border. And you could see it even when I was representing Trump in the White House. In the last 2 or 3 months of his administration, the border was much harder to control and more people started coming in because that surge began anticipating Biden. They weren't anywhere near the numbers that Biden had. So as just a matter of shock therapy, Trump's last year with that extra surge was 400,000. Biden's first year was 1.5 million, then 2.5 million, then 3.2 million. Those are the numbers of people that came in. In some way, we stopped them at the border, recorded their names, and then put them on airplanes and buses and sent them all over America. And gave them dates to come back for hearings, like 2029. Now, what's the chance they're going to come back? None. How did we vet them? Eventually, we didn't vet them at all because there were too many of them. But there are about 17 to 20 governments where you can't vet them. Those were the governments that were the part of the program that Trump got beaten up so badly for, where they said he was going to keep out Muslims. I actually first volunteered to help Trump when he was criticized for that. And along with several former federal judges, we developed a program, which is what he wanted to do in the first place. He wanted to have much stronger vetting for countries that are dangerous. I mean, here's a really good reason. Because when you take people from countries that are dangerous, very often you can't vet them because they either have no records or they don't give them to you. So we get somebody right now from Venezuela, right? Maduro doesn't cooperate with us. You call up Venezuela, they don't answer. Does this guy have a record? Was this guy in a mental institution? Is this guy some kind of crazy pervert? You don't get an answer. The same thing in Somalia. I mean, I go on and on. I think it's somewhere between 17 and 19 to 20 governments do not respond to our requests. So vetting is useless. Now, in the case of China, something else is going on. In the case of China, you got to go get my book, The Biden Crime Family, and you'll understand what's going on. In the case of China, the ones that we catch at the border and detain, the vetting constitutes 3 questions, maybe 4. Well, that's no vetting at all. Then, but those aren't really the difficult ones. The difficult ones are the ones that Biden waves in. They come in under special provisions of the immigration law where they're not even checked. They're allowed to come in by private plane. We don't know how many of them there are. Finally, China and the Mexican cartels have had a 20 to 25-year relationship. And China and the cartels have made a fortune off fentanyl. I mean, they basically have an exclusive on fentanyl. All the precursors in China, well, there's an exception, but in terms of what comes into the United States, because they go through Turkey for Europe, but they go through Mexico for the United States. Those Mexican cartels have become, richer than the mafia ever was, richer than the Colombian cartels ever were. And if you think they're a bunch of like little simpletons and whatever, forget it. This is an extraordinarily sophisticated group of organized crime families. And in almost every major city, they have enormous numbers of agents. They're people. Because they used to just send the drugs in and they were getting cheated. So now they have agents to follow up on what happens to the fentanyl, to make sure they're getting their proper percentage, and that the Chinese are. Why am I making this point? I'm making this point because if you are head of Chinese intelligence and you want to get in a couple of really high value people, the cartel is capable of doing it and nobody will ever see them. That's a very big border. There's a tremendous amount of room between border stations. The cartels know that border better than we do. And where they make their big money, aside from fentanyl, and is by selling entry without detection. What I mean by that is we don't see them. We don't know who they are. We don't have their names. The calculation that was made before the universities realized that it might be used to help Trump, this one comes from MIT, is that for every one that we spot and detain for a short period of time, there's at least one that comes in without being seen at all. That would mean if 9 to 10 million came in and we have recorded them, there's another 9 or 10 million that came in that we haven't. So for purposes of being careful, I would say 4 or 5 million. And those have to be the most dangerous. Those are what you would call the high value illegal migrants who can pay the cartels $1 million. That's the way the fentanyl comes in. The fentanyl does not come in the way cocaine and heroin used to come in, that I spent, a large part of my career seizing. It comes in those open areas between border stations where nobody ever gets to see it. So, yep, we seize fentanyl, but that's got to be about 10% of the fentanyl that's headed for the United States. All the rest of it is completely undetected. So this is going to be a big job, but he did in fact find exactly the right person. there can't be anybody better than Tom Homan to do this. And I don't know that Tom will face any kind of serious opposition. Well, let me not talk too soon, because you know what they're doing. They're trying very, very hard to dig up whatever they can on anybody, and to try to stop as many of his appointments as possible. Used to be a period of time in America where, whether Republican or Democrat, when a president, picked his initial cabinet, they basically let him have who he wanted. Because let him. If you don't give him who he wants, how can you hold him accountable? Let him have who he wants, and if the guy screws up, then he's responsible for it. And you got a midterm election coming up, and we can correct it at the midterm election. You don't like Gates, okay? Give him Gates. Gates screws up, Trump will pay the price. I don't think he will, but somebody will screw up. They always do. They're human. I think the same thing with RFK, although, he's picked people who are controversial, but those are the people who have the courage to reform. Reformers are always controversial because they're going against the establishment. Martin Luther was very controversial. He was going against the Catholic Church, right? Well, Kennedy is an opponent of the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmaceutical industry is one of the best funded lobbying operations in the world. And on both sides, they own a lot of Democrats. They own a lot of Republicans. It's a damn disaster. So you need someone like RFK who is willing to take them on. Very willing to take them on. You need somebody like Pete Hegseth, who's willing to change the military so that we get rid of all this craziness, this concentration with diversity, and this concentration with gender sensitivity, and this a military isn't about all that. A military isn't an example of the most diverse part of America. The military is an example of the best lawful, honorable killers that we can put together. Because that's what they do. That's what they do when they fly the airplanes. That's what they do when they're on the ships. That's what they do, of course, when they're in the infantry. And they do it because we don't have them. Well, China will control the world. And then let's see what kind of freedom we have. The choice of Marco Rubio probably was the most universally praised. But Marco, they shouldn't praise him so much, the left-wingers, because Marco is a very, very committed conservative in the area of foreign policy. Remember, Marco's family comes from Cuba, and that leaves you with an understanding of communism that very few people have. And communism is at the core of just about all of the problems that we have, from the state trying to take our children, to the welfare state that we've created, to the concessions that we've made to the biggest communist powers like China. And we've really created China's wealth. And the first president to try to do anything about it was Donald Trump. And when we think of the deep state opposing him and trying to bring him down and engaging in frauds and prosecutions, a lot of that, China is behind, because he's a threat to China. And nobody's been a threat to China. Our governments, Republican and Democrat, bought the idea that China was the more peaceful as between China and Russia. In fact, China is much more cunning. It has many more resources than Russia. Russia, compared to the United States, is a relatively small economy. China, relative to the United States, is still a very small, well, not small, but still a fraction of our economy. But it has incredible, unlimited potential. Russia doesn't have that. Russia is going to get smaller rather than bigger. Trump appointed Brendan Carr to the FCC. That's a very good appointment because the FCC maybe can create a situation in America where we have free speech again.
That's right, Mayor. And I know Brendan Carr. Little known fact, I interned at the FCC. I know Brendan Carr. Like you said, a very good pick.
Yeah.
And maybe let's get him on the show sometime.
We will. And he's committed to restoring free speech in America.
That's right.
So that, I was, I don't mean to give you my experiences as the only ones. They're not. But I remember when I was thrown off of YouTube. I can't remember if it was because of the hard drive or the vaccines or both. I turned out to be right about both of them. They turned out to be wrong. But that didn't mean that I had a million something followers at the time. And they just wiped it all out because I was spreading lies about the hard drive, which turns out to be 100% true. And they turn out to have followed the liars. So do we have a little example, and I'll take a break before we get into it, but do we have a little clip we can show them of Trump's triumphant return to Madison Square Garden?
Oh, yeah.
At the UFC 309?
Yes. Let's bring something up here.
So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. So what happened to my cigar?
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee. We're back. Welcome back. This is Rudy Giuliani, America's Mayor Live, and we are in the Winston Churchill Cigar Lounge. In fact, I'm going to see if you can bring that bust of Churchill over here. If I can show it to people.
We will.
So I thought maybe we'd have some of the people here ask some questions. They have, there's a nice group.
Nice big group.
Beautiful room.
We got Monday Night Football on.
Oh, yeah.
We got to put the show on.
It looks like the Cowboys.
Cowboys and Texans.
Wow, that's an intra-Texas game,
interstate rivalry.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, my goodness. It looked like somebody just scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
Just as I looked up, there's a touchdown.
Well, we're going to take our first question from a friend of ours named Harry. Harry, you're on with the mayor.
Mayor, I just want to say it's an honor to be with you.
Well, thank you, Harry.
You are a wonderful man, and I'm very grateful to meet you.
Thank you.
You did an incredible job for our city, and everybody should remember you as the mayor of mayors. And it was wonderful, what you did. It was brilliant. But I want to know, when you first got rid of all the crime in New York,
Right.
how difficult was that? Getting rid of the mob, getting rid of every crime. I mean, you made the city very safe, and everybody wants to be safe. So how can we go forward and have a system where we can be safe in every city?
Well, I mean, it was different parts. The mafia is very different than crime in general. You know, crime in the streets. And so let's talk about the crime in the streets. When I became mayor, New York City had gone through 4 years of about 2,000 murders per year. And we had ridiculous numbers of crime. We were the crime capital of America. And what I did was I organized a system of accountability called the CompStat system. So I measured crime in all different parts of the city, and I used those statistics to figure out how I was going to attack crime. And so I assigned police officers to where the crime was happening, as opposed to just without any concentration on that. And I rewarded them for reducing crime, and I penalized them if crime went up. Over a period of time, that system won the award as the most innovative program in government by the John F. Kennedy School of Government. That system is now utilized in a number of countries, because I then started a security business and taught other countries how to do it. And by the time I finished, I had reduced murder from 2,000 to about 500, maybe 600. And then Bloomberg continued that program and reduced it to 300 and something. And we reduced crime altogether about 80%. So we went from being the most dangerous city in America to being the safest large city in America. And it really had to do with empowering my police officers to do their job, measuring their accomplishments in the right way. The objective of a police department is not to arrest people. That's a tool. The objective of a police department is to eliminate crime. So the objective of success, how you measure success, has to be not how many people did you arrest, but how much have you reduced crime. And once I got the police to start thinking that way, that they would be rewarded, they would come up with brilliant theories as to how to reduce crime. There's so many of them, I can't describe them all. I'll give you one that's maybe easy to see. So one of the great attributes of New York City, one of the great things it possesses, is Broadway. And Broadway is one of the reasons so many people come to New York. Well, Broadway had become so dangerous, we'd gotten down to about 5 million people coming to Broadway. And part of the reason was people always crowd together right before the play is going to open. They're in large crowds on Broadway and in the small other streets. And the muggers and pickpockets would get into them, and you'd have maybe a couple of hundred crimes every night. Somebody's wallet would be stolen, somebody's purse would be stolen. Every once in a while, their head would be bashed in order to get it. And we didn't do a damn thing about it. So with my police department, and I can't tell you if I came up with this idea or Bratton or some cop, or we came up with the following idea. We have a very large mounted police in New York. The horses are in Central Park.
Horse police.
Horse police. And they stand up very high. They can see into a crowd. And I started a new unit called the Anti-Crime Unit. They were undercover, So I stuck them in the crowd with little walkie-talkies, and I had the police officers on the horses watching. So when the first pickpocket took place, the guy with the walkie-talkie would tell the cop in the sector where that cop was located, look for the guy who's about 5'7", da-da-da-da-da. He's grabbing wallets. He'd pick them up. Or he's grabbing purses. So we cleaned it up in about 6 weeks. And Broadway went from 5 million people to 18 million people coming to Broadway by the time we were finished. I mean, unbelievable. And also, it was the only, I had to get rid of the sex shops on 42nd Street, because for years, the city had been trying to get Disney to put a live theater in New York. And the head of Disney wouldn't do it because he said, I can't do Disney productions in New York, and the kids are going to be subjected to drug dealers, prostitutes. So I said to him, well, those mayors didn't know how to do it. I'll eliminate that in a year.
Question.
And I did.
One more question.
I passed a law that didn't allow them to be within 300 feet of each other. So I was able to move them all out of, and I got lucky. The case went before the only Republican judge in Manhattan. She upheld it, and I did it before they could get it reversed. And I moved all the sex shops out so that 4 theaters came in, multiplex, and Broadway became fabulously successful and totally safe. It's deteriorated somewhat now.
We all love New York.
Yeah.
And you're the man that beyond helped New York. And I'm not a racist. I believe in stop and frisk.
Believe in what?
Stop and frisk.
He believes in stop.
Yeah.
But it's stop, question, and frisk.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, stop, question, and frisk is intended to reduce murder in the black community. So you have to understand that this is true when we had 2,000 murders. It's true when we had 500 murders. The percentages always remain the same. About 70 to 75% of the murderers are black. About 70 to 75% of the people murdered are black. And then the other 25 to 30%, Hispanic, Asian. The number of white murderers in New York City in any given year is about 8%. And the number of whites murdered is about 12%. So that's not a terribly, even when we're at 2,000 murders, that's a lot more people than at 500. But still, the predominant victim of murder are black people. So whatever you do to reduce murder, you're helping black people 7 out of 10 times.
That's right, Mayor. 71% of black victims and black perpetrators. 71% of all non-domestic homicides involved black victims and a black perpetrator in New York City in 2023. That's 71%.
Can I say one thing? Thank you for your service,
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry. Harry! That's interesting, Mayor, and that goes back to your point. I mean, these policies were intended to help the very communities that these race baiters like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, they try to turn these things on you.
When after Bloomberg left and de Blasio took over, the number of murders went up, number of crimes went up, particularly now. And the primary victims are black people.
I'll send it to you.
And look, Chicago is the best example of all. Chicago hasn't had a Republican mayor in 60 years. It's been a Democratic mayor for 60 years. Every weekend, it's a question of, are they going to have 8 murders or 20? And are they going to have 20 or 100 shootings? It's a killing field. And it is disproportionately, again, 7, 8 out of 10 in the black community. And nobody does a damn thing about it. The present mayor is a complete left-wing.
He blamed Nixon.
Well, he's both a left-wing communist, and he's also a jackass. And it's got even worse under him. Now, he blames poverty on Richard Nixon. I mean, Richard Nixon, we blame a lot of things on him. I don't think we can blame poverty on Richard Nixon.
In Chicago.
I don't even,
in 2024.
I don't even think too many of our people nowadays who don't get any kind of education even know who Richard Nixon is.
Yeah, that's sad.
You go ask those kids protesting who's Richard Nixon, and they'll, well, how about the one that you asked about the riot? Yeah? Huh? She didn't even know why she was there protesting.
That's right. Well, the classic video, we asked those protesters outside NYU, why are you out here protesting? And she didn't have a clue. And she
we heard something was
she
going
said as
on.
much. Yeah, I don't know. And then she asked her friend, do you know why we're out here protesting? That video went viral. So we'll bring that up. Let's move on to our next question. We have you ready, Mayor?
Heck of a cigar, by the way.
Strong cigar. Why don't you identify yourself and ask away?
My name is Weston. It's good to be here with you.
Love the jacket.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna get you one.
Yes.
And we're gonna put a cape on it with a big AM for America's mayor, because you're like a superhero. And let me just tell you this. I'm a boy from the sticks of Indiana. And I didn't know much about New York. What I remembered growing up were the Charles Bronson years.
Oh my gosh, yeah, sure.
And then the White Knight, Mr. Giuliani, came in and he turned it all around. And I think about the dear departed Frank Sinatra. And I think if he came back for a minute, he would rescind his song and take it away, because they haven't treated you like they need to treat you since you've been gone. And I also think of that beautiful band Whitesnake. You don't know what you got till it's gone. Yeah. And we love you. All the sane world loves you.
Well,
You've been through some bumps and some bruises, but we all love you and we're behind you. So I'm thinking we got a beautiful president again.
Thank God.
Thank God. And one thing that I would like to see, if you're up for it, I'd like to see him appoint you as the crime czar, because you know the job and you can get the job done. Would you take that job, and how would you start that job? What would you do for that job?
Well, I had that job in the federal government way back. And the first thing that I did was I put together the Attorney General's Task Force on Violent Crime in 1981 under Ronald Reagan. And they did a series of recommendations that we implemented over the next 20 years. And they're most of the good ideas about reducing crime came out of that. And now I would just have to repeat it. I mean, you first of all, you have to have policemen. I mean, you can have the greatest theories in the world. If you don't have enough troops, you can't bring crime down. So New York City is, so when I was mayor, it was 41,000 police officers, down to about 33,000 now, 34,000. That's not enough when you consider that New York City has also, through the grace of Joe Biden, has about 200,000 new illegal aliens. And they don't even know who the hell they are. 60% of the crime in 2 of the boroughs in New York is now committed by illegal aliens who just came in. So think about that. If they hadn't come in, crime would be down by 60% there. That's thanks to Joe Biden and thanks to our idiot mayor who invited them. He's complaining about it now. And he complained about Biden, which was probably his biggest mistake, which is the only reason they're investigating his corruption. I don't know if he's innocent or guilty, but Biden wouldn't go after a Democrat unless the guy crossed him. I mean, the governor has been involved in a lot more scandalous activity than the mayor. They've never gone after her because she kisses his backside. So the mayor gives, he actually just stopped, but for a couple of years, if you are an illegal alien, you get a debit card when you come to New York City. I mean, why the hell wouldn't you come to New York City? You get a debit card. If you don't like the food in the in the shelters and the facilities because they were complaining about the food. He gave them a debit card so they could buy food wherever they wanted. But of course, you can use it for anything else too, like buying drugs. We created this problem. So all you have to do is deconstruct it. You have to close the border, which I'm confident will do. I think that's the easiest of the things we have to do. And we really do have to deport all these people who we never wanted here in the first place. And I don't know who they are. We got to find them and deport them. And some of the countries will not take them back. Well, the hell with them. We'll just put them on a big transport and send them back. What is Venezuela going to do if we land a big transport surrounded by 7 or 8 fighters and we just throw the people out of the transport and leave them in Caracas? What's Maduro going to do? Try to shoot us down with a pea shooter? I mean, this is a serious thing. What happened to the United States in the last 3.5 years is unprecedented. It was an invasion. I'll give you a couple of things to compare it to. So everyone knows Ellis Island. Ellis Island was in existence for 60 years. 12 million immigrants came through Ellis Island. All of them vetted. Anybody that had any kind of suggestion of a disease had to spend a month in quarantine. They have a hospital there. If there's any question about criminal record or whatever, you put in a little prison there. And then you were let in or sent back. We've just had 15 to 20 million come in. Ellis Island, in 60 years, 12 million. The last 3.5 years, 15 to 20 million. And we don't know who they are. We didn't send anybody back. We didn't check anybody for disease. We have no idea who they are. That's like it's not even a shock to the system. It's like an attack on the system that is impossible to really even describe. 15 to 20 million new people, and we don't know who they are in 3 years. We're going to be feeling the repercussions of this 4, 5, 6 years from now. And luckily, we have a president that'll do something about it. But some of it, crime will go up, and it really won't be his fault. It's from the 15 to 20 million people that was sent here. And every time he says that they emptied the prisons and they emptied the mental institutions, that is absolutely correct. I experienced that when I worked for Ronald Reagan. I was in charge of turning around the Haitian and the Mariel boat lists. And that was a couple of million people at most. It wasn't 15. And we knew who most of them were and where they were. So yeah, it took a lot to turn it around. It changed Miami from a quiet little city to, for a period of time, a murder capital in a space of 6 months. So,
and how did those folks come over here? Who sent them over?
In which case? Oh, and Mariel?
Yeah.
Mariel is what Maduro is following from his hero Castro. Jimmy Carter in 1978, out of I guess sympathy, without thinking what he was saying, said, anybody from Cuba can just come into the United States because they're fleeing communism. When Castro heard that, operating at a much higher degree of cunning than Jimmy Carter, so you want everybody from Cuba? I'll give you everybody from Cuba. So he took about 100,000 people who were quite legitimate, linking them up with their families, a good thing to do. And he put about 30,000 criminals in with him. And when I say criminals, I mean people from mental institutions, people from institutions for the criminally insane, murderers, 30,000. Now, we got a lot more than that now. So that's that's right in the communist playbook. And as Trump said during the campaign, quite correctly, you wouldn't be much of a dictator if you didn't take advantage of that. The United States is saying, the border's open, anybody can come in. Well, man, I can unload my problems that way, right? I can go I got to pay money for those people in the prisons, and So I go round them all up and I send them in and I pay the cartels to make sure they get it. And now crime is down in Caracas by about 60%. They accomplished in Caracas in a slightly different way what I accomplished in New York. But we got them now.
So I'm hearing you. That is a yes. You're going to accept.
Oh, yeah. I would do anything I had to do.
We love you. We love you. Hey, the sane world loves you. We're behind you all the way, and we're going to get you a great big cape.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great guests. Great questions so far. Who's up next? Come on over. You have to leave. Robert has to leave.
So did we-
all right, Robert's next, and then you're coming. You're on deck.
I'll be around tomorrow.
Yeah. All righty. Next up, our friend Robert.
Rudy,
Yes,
how are
sir.
you, buddy? We traveled the world together.
We did. But you weren't a cowboy then.
Yeah.
Yes, you were.
So, everybody listen to this. What Rudy and I traveled the world together. We were in how many countries, Rudy?
10?
Ton together.
Yeah.
And Rudy Giuliani provided a unique influence for Donald Trump. What you did was private diplomacy. And me and you traveled to Bahrain. We were all over the world together, me and you. And what you did for the president was so amazing because you provided a unique access point for the president of the United States to actually listen what the leaders felt. Rudy and I were in Bahrain.
Mm-hmm.
And the ambassadors were there. And after the ambassadors left, Rudy and I and folks were talking with the king, the Emir. Remember, we went to the
Cool
golf
king.
course. Remember the
Yeah,
king?
he was dressed up like an ordinary little golfer.
Yeah.
We were driving up and I expected to see a big crown and thing. And there's a guy there dressed up in sort of the club shirt and little shorts. And
So
it was
Rudy-
the king of Bahrain.
So Rudy and I get out of the car, and Rudy doesn't know this is the president, the Emir of Bahrain, and Rudy thinks it's like the valet. Remember,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
golf course.
Yeah, because he came over and greeted me. I thought he was going to take me to see the king.
Yes,
it was
sir.
the king.
Yes, sir. But what I want to tell you about you, thank you. What Rudy Giuliani did was provide a unique access and resource for Donald Trump to get around the bureaucracy. Right? I'm a lobbyist, and Rudy and I went all over the world together, and I love him for that. But he gave Donald Trump the ability to actually listen to the people that mattered. So when the ambassadors were there, you gave information to Donald that was completely devoid of the bureaucracy.
Well, I tried to help my country.
And I remember, so when Rudy and I met we were in Bahrain and meeting.
Just don't give out any state secrets here.
No.
No, these aren't state secrets.
No. But Rudy and I, he has a great friend named Bo. Bo is his longtime
Bo
person.
Bo, love Bo.
Bo's a dear friend of mine. So Rudy and I were in Bahrain together, and Trump wasn't getting the right kind of information. And after our meeting, Trump called. I'll never forget it. We were sitting on a patio in Bahrain, and Trump called Rudy, and Rudy was able to give the president what the Emir actually wanted. So Rudy actually was the person that gave the president the information directly, no bullshit, without the bureaucracy. And I've traveled all around the world, Mr. Giuliani, and I know him very well. And thank you. And you know I love you very much. But thank you for what you did. And we have traveled the world together. But what he did for this country and what he did for Donald Trump, and still today,
Well, thank you.
was amazing. And Rudy, we had a great time together.
Yeah, we did.
Right?
God bless you.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you, Robert. Hey, good man. You're a good man. He always asks about you, so we're gonna get you over. All right, we got to get you over to the place.
I love Rudy.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. And of course, Mayor, that stems from all your work in the security business. Post 9/11, after you were mayor, you had the world's largest security consulting firm.
I think
90-something
I think-
countries.
I think I went to 90, altogether 90 different countries, probably 140 trips. I was on the road more than I was home. But it was very good, useful, really useful work.
Important work, and that's why so many world
Very
leaders,
exciting to
people
do it,
around
and-
the world really respect you. And I hear from folks sometimes from the craziest places. I don't want to say craziest places you wouldn't expect, where you're very well known. All righty. So identify yourself and ask away. You're on with the mayor.
My name is Alex von Welchek. It's a great honor to be here with you, Mayor. Thank you for all your service. I'm trying to make heads and tails out of the Middle East, and in particular,
Good luck.
Saudi Arabia. I'm a climate tech entrepreneur. I've been trying to develop a lot of business there, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening in Saudi Arabia.
Would you take that for me?
You know, we see Donald Trump constantly with Yasser al-Rahmani together, and other leaders from Saudi Arabia. We see the Saudis now taking part in BRICS. They're making some kind of arrangements with Iran.
Right.
They seem to be sitting in both chairs, playing both sides. How do you view Saudi Arabia and what's happening?
Well, first of all, they're only playing both sides because we basically support Iran. I mean, so Saudi Arabia is as concerned about Iran as Israel is. In fact, Saudi Arabia would probably tell you that they're Iran's biggest target.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, and it goes back to before even the Muslim division of Sunni and Shia. It goes back to Persian and Arab. And so Trump had done a really great job of putting together a very solid alliance by doing all the Abraham Accords. And he was on the verge of bringing Saudi Arabia in. Biden comes in, and the first thing he does is lift all the sanctions on. Biden pumped about $100 million into the Iranian economy, which frightened the hell out of Saudi Arabia. So they decided after 2 or 3 years of Biden attacking them, eventually he went to them and begged for oil, and they basically told him to go to hell. But they spent about 2 or 3 years being attacked and abandoned the way Israel was. And they decided they had to have a back channel to Iran to protect themselves. But I think that can be changed pretty damn quickly. They don't want to be there. They understand the danger of the reign of terror as well as Israel does. And they're necessary. Because if you could put together an alliance of the best military in the Middle East, which is Israeli, the richest country in the Middle East, which is Saudi Arabia, some other pretty good militaries, you could really block Iran. And finally, at some point, we got to take out the regime of terror. Of all the governments that were overthrown, that's the one that needs to be overthrown the most. You can't possibly have peace in the Middle East with the Islamic Empire of Iran, because it doesn't want peace. It wants the Middle East. It wants the Middle East under its control. So it has done a pretty good job of co-opting. I mean, they basically had Iraq completely. Now they got about half of it. Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. That's a pretty big alliance.
But how does that fit together with the Saudis directly trading with China, the Saudis aligning with Russia? You know, it all seems to be conflicts of interest.
The Saudis are a very complex group of people, and they're not perfect, but they got to protect themselves.
Yeah.
America was no longer protecting them.
Yeah.
The minute you make Iran stronger, you're endangering Saudi Arabia. I mean, Biden chose Iran over Israel and Saudi Arabia. He gave $14 million to Israel. He's given well over $100 million to Iran.
Yeah.
And how can you even give a penny to Iran when they are dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel, and they're also dedicated to our destruction?
Yeah.
And they've killed a hell of a lot of us. During the Iraq War, they were in there killing American soldiers. And
how do you see Russia fitting into that? Because they're playing all the sides too.
Another example of, because of the Russian collusion and all of that, the Trump administration in the first term couldn't really make any kind of reasonable arrangements with Russia to keep them away from China. So Russia just, big vacuum. The biggest economy in the world is the United States. You really want to be allied with us. The second biggest is China.
Yeah.
And we were making it impossible to do any kind of negotiations with them. So we really created a vacuum for China to bring these countries in. I mean, China was never supporting Iran until now, and we're going to have to change that. It's going to be harder to do because when he came in originally, there was only one war going on, and that was the one with ISIS that Obama created,
Right.
by calling them the JV and underestimating them. And he ended that in about 6 months, and he left Biden a world at peace. And what is he getting back?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're getting back a world it's not an exaggeration to say a couple of mistakes and we could have a world war.
Absolutely.
And if anybody can do it, he can do it, but it's not going to be like that.
Bob, you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that have to be changed.
It
That's
all,
a very good question. I mean, Saudi Arabia,
Let me know. Okay.
the Saudi Arabian royal family
Sit here, and then
has a lot of problems and a lot of corruption, a lot of issues. But believe me, they have no unrealistic ideas about Iran. And then they also are very worried about their population, where they do have a lot of religious fanatics.
Yeah.
And they could be overthrown pretty easily.
absolutely.
And then we could end up having not a country that maybe goes both ways, but a country that just goes one way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a complicated situation that is certainly within Trump's competence to handle, and it was way beyond. I mean, before Biden was demented, he was stupid, and these things were way beyond him. So he was being manipulated, and I do believe that Obama has some kind of a real affinity for these Islamic criminals. I mean, remember, he wouldn't allow us to say Islamic terrorism or Islamic extremism. People had killed people yelling out Allahu Akbar, and they wouldn't describe it as a hate crime. What do you have to do to make it clear that it's a hate crime, but to invoke your version of God? But
4 times before COVID, 4 times since, always for business. And
I think
every time I come back, my head's spinning more and more.
I'll tell you who maintained a behind-the-scenes relationship with Saudi Arabia: Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason they can't make peace is for public purposes, because Saudi Arabia is afraid it will create a revolution within Saudi Arabia. But Israel and Saudi Arabia over the years have done a lot of business together. And Israel, probably Netanyahu understands Saudi Arabia better than any of us.
Yeah.
They're not worried about Saudi Arabia. They're worried about Iran.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. What a great
That's a great
questions.
question, by the way.
That was a really good question. So just a few more questions left on a very busy Monday.
I do need another lighter. I need a lighter.
What? We need a lighter. Who's got a lighter for the mayor?
Here it is.
We got one. We got
I
one.
found
Thank
it.
you, Bob.
Maybe an ashtray.
I'll grab that.
See, this is how you relight a cigar. You have to get rid of the ashes. I don't know.
Oh,
where to
here.
put-
Let me get you an ashtray, Mayor.
So, well, we'll have the young lady ask a question first, and then you can do it. You can let her hold the microphone. She won't steal it.
Hello, my name is Ellen, and I'm a
You
member
have to
of
speak
Palm
up a little.
Beach. I'm Ellen, and I am a member of Palm Beach Young
Oh, if I do this?
Republicans.
Maybe-
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So, what do you think? Do you think Democrats can create any obstacles and present any challenges for Trump's transition of power, like starting a war?
Starting a war?
Do you think Democrats can present any challenges for Trump's transition of power?
Well, they're trying to jam him up, keep him from taking office. Something that Jamie Raskin alluded to previously.
Look, I stopped predicting what Democrats will do after 2020. But right now, I don't foresee that. I think they're going to try to oppose his government, but I don't think they're going to try to oppose him lawfully taking over the government. And I don't know if they're going to start a war. It's very dangerous what we have going on both in Israel and in Ukraine. I don't think what Biden just did in allowing the Ukrainians to use these somewhat longer range missiles is going to make a big difference to Putin, because they just go like a couple hundred miles into Russia, and Moscow is 700 miles away from Kharkiv and 1,400 miles away from Kyiv. They're really just placating. And the strangest thing is, Biden has constantly said he wants to see Ukraine win, but he delayed all the weapons he's given them. The ones that he gives them, he doesn't let them use. It's almost as if he wants the war inside Ukraine to go on forever with no result. And it could be because it allows the flow of a lot of money into a country where the people are fine, but the government has always been totally corrupt, including the guy who runs it right now. So Trump will not be burdened by that. And both our enemies or our adversaries and our friends will know that. I think that'll help stabilize things. Thank you.
Great question. We got our next guest. Just a couple more questions, Mayor, before we sign off. We got a packed house, a lot of questions. Everyone's excited to have you
We
here.
got to quiet them down just a little. I don't know if people at home can hear.
Okay. They can hear fine.
Okay,
I like the
okay.
background noise a little bit. Go ahead. All righty. Just go ahead and identify yourself and ask away. You're on with the mayor. Might be the other ear.
Mr. Mayor, my name's Nick Castellino. It's very nice to meet you. Not to be confused with Castellano. But I want to say it's an honor to be here with you tonight, watching everything you did with New York City, and then what I've watched you and other members of the Trump administration and other members of his team endure during this unprecedented time of what the left has pulled. I have a question for you, and I'm so happy to be able to get your opinion on this. What are they thinking now that you guys defied every odd, putting you guys in jail, charging you with political warfare? What happens next?
Well, I hope that all gets in time reversed, and the people who have been put in prison are let out, particularly the ones where there was no justification at all. And I think the press, because it covers it up, doesn't present to the American people that although there were some people on January 6th who committed crimes, many of the people that have been in prison committed no crime at all. And in order to try to show big numbers, I mean, they arrested people who probably didn't even know what they were doing. And even the ones that committed crimes, they're treating much more harshly than people who commit much worse crimes in just about every one of the Soros-dominated American cities. You think about it, in 2020, you take a look at the riots in 2020, almost any one of them was worse than January 6th. Nobody burned down the Capitol. Yeah, when Tampon Tim was first nominated for vice president, I went back and I looked at all the demonstrations in Minneapolis. They burned the city, part of the city down. Nobody burned anything on January 6th. I mean, they did some damage, but nothing in comparison to even one of those riots. Now, all those people
it doesn't
went free.
hold a candle to what they've done in other cities.
Because Soros had to fix it. He nominated it and gave millions of dollars to those DAs. And you can't tell me they didn't select those cities because they knew the DAs were fixed. And then they came up with all the bail money for everybody. Meanwhile, the January 6th people couldn't get people to represent them. They were afraid. The lawyers got frightened because that they would do to them what they did to me, which is why they go after me. Even the case with a $148 million judgment. Nobody knows that that case was brought by Hunter Biden's law partner and a guy who represented the most crooked company in Ukraine. They paid a $10 million bribe to the Bidens. Well, why the hell do you think they were going after me? These women would never have been able to afford a lawyer like that. I mean, I could go into great detail. They doctored the tapes. They made it impossible for me to get a fair trial. And they came up with a judgment that even if what they were saying was true, which it wasn't, was ridiculous, $148 million. And now I have a judge that's virtually taking away all my property. And particularly all the memorials I have of my public service. I mean, it's
unbelievable.
It's cruel. It's vicious.
It's an atrocity.
It's a little upsetting because I feel like I'm alone fighting them. Nobody stands up for me. But I can stand up for myself pretty damn well. And I didn't do anything wrong. So
you have proven time and time again that you can take on anyone, including the mafia.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm being honest and I'm being truthful, and every time these things have been resolved, it turns out they're lying and I'm telling the truth. I was telling the truth about Russian collusion. They were lying. I was telling the truth about the hard drive and they were lying. So why would it change now?
I don't want to take too much more of your time. It's an honor to be in the room with you, but I want to close by saying this. I don't want you to feel like you're alone because I know I speak for a lot of people in our group when I say that
I know that.
Myself and all of the American people on the right side of the fence are behind you. You're not alone.
Well, God
You're an
bless you.
inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Giuliani.
Well, we're going to take a short break.
Nick's a good man. So, Mayor,
Let's take a short break.
let's take a short break.
Okay,
So we're going to
please.
take a short break,
Good.
and we'll be right back. Just give me a moment here. So we're entering soccer time. We're about to be done. We're going to take another short break.
Delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnels to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now. Welcome back to America's Mayor Live as we go into what we call soccer time. But this is a reminder to make your contribution to Tunnels to Towers, T2T.org. Thanks to the generosity of people like you who make those contributions, Tunnels to Towers welcomed U.S. Army Specialist Brett Menard into a new mortgage-free smart home in Florida. Brett decided to enlist in the U.S. Army after being really motivated by September 11th. and his desire to be part of America's defense and part of something very important. While on a road clearance mission in Afghanistan, Brett's vehicle was blown up by an improvised explosive device. And in that instant, it changed his life forever. The blast left Brett a T4 paraplegic with traumatic brain injury, compartment syndrome in both arms, unable to use his legs, and severe internal injuries. He even needed a total face reconstruction because his bones and teeth were shattered by the IED explosion. Despite his overwhelming challenges, Brett remained with his spirit unbroken. And because of the support of people like you, Tunnels to Towers built him a specially adapted smart home that allows catastrophically injured warriors like him to live more independently, or as independently as possible. America's heroes need your help now more than ever. So right now, donate $11 a month at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. And do it now, because Tunnel to Towers is in the process of not only continuing this program, and there's a lot more work to do, but also trying to eradicate veteran homelessness, which has a lot to do with the suicide rate and a lot of the other things. And when we see this whole situation with illegal aliens being treated better than our veterans, certainly true in New York City, we're going to have to step in and do something. And Frank Siller and Tunnels to Towers has, and they're doing a great job. Just a few things that you're not going to hear anywhere else. But one of the reasons that Trump won, and one of the reasons that he won such a decisive victory, is he got almost across the board a vast majority of the Catholic vote. Well, that was good to see, because Harris went out of her way to attack Catholics, Christians. Remember when people invoked Jesus at a gathering she had and said, "You don't belong here, you should go to the place down the road"? Well, they did. They all went to the place down the road, and they voted for Trump. He also got the highest percentage of the Jewish vote than any Republican has gotten, maybe ever. I don't know. I mean, Reagan got a good percentage of it, but I think Trump may have done better. These are people that realize, the people that came to realize that at least that the people who have taken control of the Democratic Party really want to accomplish the goals of Karl Marx, which is to drive God out and to take your children away and make them property of the state, which is what they're doing with their operative, the teachers union, which was originally a communist union and remains a communist union. So as you watch these appointments trickle out, realize that, of course, these people are disruptors. We have to disrupt the situation in which our rights have been taken away from us. Someone got all upset because Vivek Ramaswamy on Maria Bartiromo's show said that they're going to work very hard to completely eliminate some federal agencies. Of course we should. I mean, the Department of Education is one that's obvious, but I can go through plenty that aren't doing any good for anybody, except regulations that crush you for reasons that have nothing to do with your health, your safety, your ability to support your family, that have to do with theories that come right out of Marxism. Well, we've got plenty more to cover. I do have to talk about two cases, and I'll do it very, very quickly. One of them is the Penny case in New York. in which Daniel Penny is being persecuted for engaging in something for which he should be given a medal. This career criminal Neely came on the subway, threatened the hell out of people, frightened them to death. They presented witnesses who said we were afraid for our lives, and we thank God that Daniel Penny stepped in and grabbed him. And they say he put him in a chokehold and he killed him. Well, I'm going to tell you, I looked at that, and all I can see is that he was restraining him, and the guy was moving around like a madman. Now, it's very possible that this guy, Neely, died of the vast amount of drugs that he had in his system that could have easily taken his life. But the coroner, who seems to me to have a completely closed mind, has decided it was the force of Neely's forearm that did it. Except she doesn't know. She had to admit on the stand she has no idea what kind of force he actually exerted. And when you look at the video, it seems to me that his arm was up here. And if it did slip down, which I don't see it slip down, but if it did, what would be totally understandable given the way in which the guy was struggling. I mean, this guy threatened to kill people on that train. We get upset when people, somebody is beaten up or raped or killed and nobody comes to help them. Now we have a guy that comes to help him and we want to put him in jail for 10 or 20 years. And I'm going to tell you, absolutely true. If Penny were black, Bragg wouldn't prosecute him because Bragg is a vicious racist. You can see it with the Dominican store owner who was defending himself, and he actually had him arrested for murder. Luckily, that case got turned around, and the guy left the United States and went to the Dominican Republic because he didn't feel safe here. And now there's a poll that was taken that shows that the people in New York are going to want to reelect Bragg. This is after in California, they just threw out all of these Soros DAs, which Bragg is one of them. What the hell? We don't learn a lesson? And then we have, of course, the tragic case of Laken Riley, whose name Biden couldn't even pronounce correctly, who was killed by Ibarra, who came into the United States illegally from Venezuela, was arrested several times in New York and set free. And he was set free. And the police in New York are not allowed to report him to immigration. Had any of those things been done, Laken Riley would be alive today. And I do not understand, and you should write to whoever, the attorney general in Georgia or what. Why isn't this guy, why aren't they trying to impose the death penalty on this guy? He deliberately raped her and murdered her. He came into the country illegally. And I'm sure they're going to convict him. The case is overwhelming. But then we'll put him in jail for the rest of his life. It'll cost us millions of dollars to keep him alive. And don't ever tell me that life in prison is worse than the death penalty, because I'll show you all the people who've had the death penalty imposed, who spend their entire life trying to get it reversed so they can be in prison for the rest of their lives. So don't try to substitute liberal thinking for the mind of a criminal. There's absolutely no reason why this person shouldn't be executed. If you have a death penalty, this is exactly the kind of aggravated case with the evidence overwhelming that it should be applied to. So I'm going to ask you all to include in your prayers not only the people of Israel and the people of Ukraine and the people of Iran, which we do all the time, but also Laken Riley's family It's terrible what they had to go through in that court. Terrible. And it's terrible that this happened because it didn't have to happen. It only happened because they stole the 2020 election. He's one of the people that Biden invited in. And all you had to do was the simplest background check on him. You would have found out he's a career criminal and a pervert and part of Transdragra, the gang that's here thanks to the Democrat Party. So they should be kept in our prayers as well. Well, we'll be back with you tomorrow night, 7 on Frank's Speech and X, and then with America's Mayor Live right here. Until then, you keep focused on the reformation that's going on in this country, because it is very, very exciting. And it's our hope that we can reestablish a lawful country and not ruled by despots with a criminal justice system that has unfairly persecuted thousands of people. So God bless America. Okay. All right, Ted. You got to get me a cigar. You got to get me an ashtray now. One ashtray. Yeah, I know. Bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk,